Beginning January 1st, 2020, the recreational use of cannabis will be legal in the state of Illinois.
Available to stream now, my mini doc dives into the history of Illinois legalization, starting with
January 1st, what should we expect? The biggest thing that we need people to understand is that January 1, in terms of the criminal justice system here in this state, is the end of prohibition.
See how Illinois missed its chance at real cannabis reform with key failures, including the fact that
the program includes regulation on possession limits.
So people can still be arrested for a possession.
And I want to highlight that in its first year of legalized recreational marijuana in the state of Illinois, they arrested 3 times as many black people for possession than any other race.
We've run into so much cannabis, we've run out of places to put it.
I have represented people and taken their cases through the court system who got charged with more serious crimes only because the police said that they smelled cannabis. And not because the police said you have illegal cannabis, or not because you have too much cannabis, or not because you're high on cannabis, but because I can smell it and that's it.
Attorney goes, he understands that he can't be smoking and his cannabis flower shouldn't be open. And I was like, I'd like to say for the record that I was not smoking and my flower was not open.
So that's where we're at right now in Illinois, and I hope it changes.
Start watching now at colememo.com/minidoc. So yeah, there's always that awkward moment, but when I it happens more so in person, where like if I'm like setting up equipment, like I like try not to talk to the guest that's right in front of me. And if I do, it's like I make small talk because it's like I don't want to get too much into the conversation without it getting captured. You know what I mean? So
that's what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, dude, it's nice to meet you, Caleb. We were just chatting for the first time before we hopped on air. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, to me and my listening audience?
Yeah, so my name's Caleb Howard. I'm the CEO and founder of Flower Girl, and also I'm the M4MM state director in Illinois.
Awesome. Yeah, and if people want to check that out, I actually just pulled up the link. I'm going to share my screen right now, and I'll throw this link in the podcast description. Minorities for medicalmarijuana.org. Minorities, number 4. medicalmarijuana.org. Once again, that'll be in the podcast description. We'll also throw the social media as well so that you can get hooked up and click follow like I just did right there. So, Caleb, how's it going, dude?
Everything's going fine for the most part. Just getting everything established. We just had a meeting last week for Minorities for Medical Marijuana, and even though we're one of the newest chapters, we also had the most people join in the meeting. So we're getting some good merch and everything for that, and we're getting the infrastructure laid out. So I'm excited.
Sweet, man. Sweet. Tell me a little bit more about, we could talk about anything and everything, but since we started with Minorities for Medical Marijuana, maybe we talk about that.
Yeah. So basically, here's a quick rundown of what happened. I was looking more so when I was starting up my brand with my family and everything, how we could expand and understand the playing field. So I ended up talking to Charles Wu because one of my manufacturers recommended me to him. So we kind of break it down. We go back and forth, and then I learn about this opportunity because me and him, we all went to lobby, and they called my sister a criminal. And ever since then, even though it's legal and federally legal due to the Farm Bill, hemp is, and we were just lobbying against getting permanently banned in pretty much everywhere in the state immediately. So we made sure that didn't happen. And since then, we've been working together with everyone, M4MM, IHBA, and just other hemp and even cannabis organizations in order to prevent the ban of hemp and also work together as one plant. So that's kind of what we're doing in that regards. With M4MM, since that opportunity, I have like 8 years of community service and outreach when it comes to that. So I have some experience that's another reason why I got put on board, because I'm familiar with the non-for-profit spaces. So.
Gotcha. Very interesting. I think I know what you're referring to, but I don't want to assume. when you say that somebody referred to your sister as a criminal, was it somebody in the Illinois General Assembly?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Interesting. And was it something to the effect? I'm actually trying to find the statement right now. If you can't tell, I'm looking for things. But
Yeah.
was it something to the effect of you are selling illegal drugs and you will not be allowed to kill our children this summer or something to that effect? Was that the
And
quote? Or,
something, relatively similar, you
yeah.
know. That's just
Yeah.
kind of the thing. It's just more so when I talk to the farmers, one of the biggest farmers for hemp, I remember seeing her at the Champs event, and she was just saying, I sell lotion basically. I don't sell, even in the first place. And everything that we're trying to do with the M4MM and everything that who I work with, we're trying to regulate it to make sure that children don't have access to it. We'll pay more taxes. We'll make sure that it's regulated better, but an all-out ban doesn't make sense. You know,
Yeah.
especially because we have one of the highest unemployment rates for African Americans, I believe, in the state, out of all the states, one of them. So it's just kind of like counteracting that, providing jobs for our communities that were affected on the war on drugs to try to, help Illinois become a stronger state.
Yeah, and frankly, when you make drugs illegal, I don't know, but when I was a kid, I
Hmm.
was able to buy weed so much easier than I was ever able to buy like a Miller Lite or like an
Yeah, yeah,
alcohol because it
yeah, yeah.
required me to get an adult to help me versus weed. Nobody was if you're not required to card, you may not, and that was the case with some of the dealers that I found. So, just to bring
Mhm.
it full circle, I know that you, along with other hemp operators, said. You have concerns about children? All right, we'll age gate our products. I know a lot of you already do. You have concerns about testing and labeling? All right, we'll test and labeling our product. Again, a lot of you already do.
Mhm.
Um, and I know even some of you have agreed, and I say it that way because I know that
Yeah,
not everybody agrees, but some of you have agreed to be taxed at the same,
yeah, that was me. I agree. Yeah.
yeah.
So and no one likes taxes, but I understand why, because it's just other cannabis is getting mad as well. And at the same time, I'm kind of like, instead of looking at us as the issue, you should look at the people that are charging you, I think, 25 grand for, I think it's a license, right? You should
Yeah,
be
but
mad you shouldn't be mad at them, I'll be mad at them, you know.
that's where it gets weird though, because that's like that is you just honed in on the disagreement there. Like I've debated a lot of people even this week, but on just this show and other people's shows. And one
Mhm.
of the things it comes down to, I'm like, all right, let's address all the public safety concerns. And I listed out the things that we just listed out, which is labeling, testing, and an age gate. And then I mentioned that some people are willing to be tested at the same. But then here comes it's like, well, but they don't have to pay the same licensing fees as us, and they don't have to set up all this security and all this stuff. And I'm like, you shouldn't have had to either.
Yeah, exactly.
And
And
like
that's the
those,
thing.
all of those, it's funny because if you take it out of the context of hemp,
Mhm.
they'll openly complain about all of those regulations. They'll say these burdensome, punitive regulations. But when it comes to you, they almost like hold them up as if they're a gold standard and everybody should comply with this. And it's like,
Right,
but
right,
hold
right.
on, they're stupid, you know?
Right, right, right. And that's the kind of thing when I hear people talk about equity and things like that, it's like, how? You
Yeah.
know, you think how many people, if you're already in a disadvantaged environment, let's just say, and you don't have the money or the capital to afford that license to begin with, how can you just say, oh, we need to ban hemp and good luck with this? You're just going to make a black market. And that's what people have to really factor in. And I think that sometimes people forget that hemp is a good barrier. It allows a lot of people to get into the space. And if we do it correctly in the right way, we'll have a great market, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think this people coming along, coming together, and just looking at, are we the real enemy in that? Because I'm working with cannabis people and hemp people, but I'm like, the hemp people the real enemy if they're trying to get regulations, trying to make it like liquor in a sense, bringing more money to the state, providing more jobs.
Yeah.
Kind of how I look at it. And hemp can
Yeah.
be used more than just being consumed. Also, I know this for clothing. I heard something about concrete, like hemp buildings or something. There's so much you can do with it.
Well, and
So
that's what they want you to do. They want you to like to use their words, they want you to stay in your lane. They say hemp is only for industrial purposes, which is, I think, debatable because they dropped the term industrial from the 2018 Farm Bill. They added a host of consumable cannabinoids to the law.
Yeah.
So to me, that doesn't exactly, like, unless somebody can address that, to me, that doesn't, I don't think it's only for industrial purposes anymore.
Mhm.
But like I say, their debate is really about you staying in your quote lane, them staying in theirs, and part of being in their lane is that it's limited participation in the lane, right? They don't want everybody to have access to that lane, so that's kind of like this other element I feel like to this conversation, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And kind of how I look at it sometimes in life, either you're boxed in or you are the box. And it's kind of just more so the mindset of I'm not going to let people just control or confine me or my ideas or anything I kind of stand for. And I'm going to fight for what I believe in. And I kind of believe this movement is kind of like that as well, because it's like there's so many things that we can do if you want to have a better nation overall, not just for him, but you know, I'm not going to go too far out, but it's just, yeah, we should let people have personal freedoms and make sure if things are regulated, the people are taken care of, it's not poison, and destigmatizing things so they can be used properly. I'm all for it. And that's what I believe. So,
Yeah. Well, hey, let's watch the quote I think you were referring to a moment ago. I've got it queued up.
They are selling illegal cannabis on the streets, and you will not be allowed to kill off young people this summer. If you want to sell cannabis, then get yourself legalized. I asked for a knife.
It's important.
yeah, so that's one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like you said, maybe there was a different one where she specifically referred to somebody as criminals. So
Yeah, that was my actual sister, and that's the one when we were first talking with her and everything, and just trying to convince her. Remember, there was even a doctor there trying to break down the science, and she just wouldn't listen. And the thing that I have an issue with is that if we should be able to have a conversation that's not just shutting people down, it's just like we need to communicate in order to have a better understanding of one another. When we have professionals in here that say this is how I use it, when we have veterans there, when we have, minority business owners, it's like if you represent us, you should at least show that respect and listen to us without shutting us down immediately. You know? Instead of
yeah,
calling people just criminals you saying you're standing for us, but you really kind of seem like you're against us, you know?
yeah,
Because it and then you want to hide it under the word equity and everything or diversity. And I'm like, well, aren't we all diverse? Was everyone there not diverse? The veterans, the minority business owners, everyone else, the doctors, everyone was diverse. That's how I look at diversity, not just as like what people say it is, but just true, all different colors, genders, everything,
yeah, yeah. And it's just weird. Illinois, what from my perspective, what Illinois has done is they've paired the concept of social equity with the concept of market share and price compression and receivership. So like the Cannabis Regulation Oversight Office will point to states like Michigan, which, I mean, I think I just saw a stat that now Michigan supplies cannabis to, more cannabis to the United States than California. I'll have to
Hmm.
try to find that stat, that headline really quick. But
Yeah.
the point is that it is a vibrant industry. Everybody goes to it, especially from, the eastern, I would say, side of the United States. It's one of the best cannabis markets.
Yeah.
And Illinois points to it as a failure because people go out of business sometimes and prices are low. Like, quite literally, that's what the Cannabis Regulation Oversight Office, their officer, Aaron Johnson, said something to the effect that they work every day to prevent that from happening in Illinois, and limited licenses are what they credit as preventing that from happening in Illinois.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Prices.
mean, you know,
Yeah, it's just like, huh.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe people aren't going out of business, but there are certainly, look, and I've heard of people that have gone out of business. I don't think it's pen has been put to paper on that just yet. And you know, what does out of business mean and all this stuff. Like, you know, you're not really out of the game until your license is revoked, so to say. But
Yeah.
my thing is, okay, yeah, maybe you don't have a lot of licensees facing receivership, but are a majority of your licensees even operational?
Right.
And the follow-up question is, are they selling products that are from new licensees? Because I have a feeling that still to this day, the majority of the market is supplied by the originally established licensees, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
there's only a handful of new craft growers that are even growing their own product,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
A
So
lot of,
overall, it's an interesting playing field, seeing what's going to happen down the line. I know I'm going to go talk to some more people in the next upcoming months just to prevent him from being banned as well. I have around 80 people to talk to. So once I get that move going, I'm going to be excited, you know, and I'm going to talk to, I believe, Tammy Duckworth, if I pronounce her name correctly, this Saturday. So that'll be
awesome.
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, you know, this last go round, there was, you know, a bit of a split, I would say, in the hemp movement. And, you know, LaShawn Ford had a proposal. I mean, I interviewed LaShawn Ford in 2023 about his hemp proposal at Psychedelic
Mhm.
Science 2023. And he was
Mhm.
all about, you know, open licensing, you know, giving everybody a chance to participate because, as he said, and as you just said, prohibition is proven failure. That's why we
Mhm.
legalized cannabis. So why would we,
Right.
you know, bans don't work? And I thought it was really interesting. Um, you know, are you still kind of falling on that side of the fence with LaShawn Ford's legislation, or, you know, I noticed some people, you know, have signed on, kind of almost seemed like they were opposed, and now they're proponents of Leader Lightford's bill. Where do you stand on this?
I'm not really on Lightfoot's side. I'm on LaShawn Ford's side, and I remember reading his piece of legislation, and that's kind of what I was citing to originally. And I remember Lightford also was the one that was basically not listening to even my sister, the one that called basically are a criminal. And that's one of the things. It's just like I want to have a conversation with Lightford that's productive and we can meet a middle ground. But sometimes, well, based off all the information I've been receiving, it's just been poison, poison. This is bad. This is bad. And then she's like, I smoke as well. And then I'm like, I'm really confused, you know? And I'm like,
Right.
let's do proper regulations. Let's get it going the right way. We can do that, but you have to listen to us. Because that's just like I feel like it's just that disrespect, and
Yeah.
that's why I just can't, you know. And also all the jobs at stake, all the people that put more money in it than I ever did can just lose it all overnight. I think that's crazy, you know,
Yeah.
for no real reason. Well, you know,
I mean,
we
no,
can fix our
it's
trouble. You know,
yeah.
we can. It's possible. That's the thing. I heard someone there was a house rep basically saying that they want to turn it into kind of being like alcohol almost, where you can go to a store, just show your card, and then just do it like that. That's what they were saying.
Yeah.
That's a suggestion. I'm not saying this is what's going to happen. It's just kind of treating it from that perspective. In a lot of the hemp stores I went to, you have to show your license, you have to type in your name and everything, and make sure you're of age. So
Right. And I don't know why that wouldn't be an acceptable thing. You know, it's funny people use the term gas station weed as like a negative connotation, and it's like, honestly, when I thought of cannabis legalization, I thought that meant that there was going to be some weed behind the counter.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
Just
know,
like how,
like,
yeah,
and you know, some of these people will rightfully point out like, "Oh, there's these I've never heard of these brands before." It's like, "All right, what if it were brands you've heard of before?" Cuz plenty of them now are in the hemp space, you know, Cookies, Curaleaf. So I
mhm,
would like to ask people what, you know, if you saw some brands you knew on the shelf, would you feel better about it? And all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, yes." So I think a lot of it comes out of, you know, lack of familiarity. But just to round out my point, because,
yeah.
you know, um, we sell very dangerous things at the gas station, and there's no outrage about that. Like, crazy boner pills, different stimulants,
Yeah.
alcohol, Everclear, like things
Hmm.
that can actually kill you. And we
Yeah.
all have agreed cannabis will not, cannot. And so it's like, why wouldn't it be allowed to be sold at a gas station?
Mhm. And
You
that's
know?
another thing that was just kind of running across my mind. I'm like, okay, if you're going to ban hemp, are you going to ban sugar next? You're going to ban alcohol? You're going to ban opioids? There's a lot of things that you can really ban right now, you know, that are much more extreme.
Right.
And that's just
Right.
again, the standard war on drugs and the standard. I don't. I well, they just want cannabis to take over the hemp industry. I get that, but I'm just saying. Other than that, it's very interesting to me, and that's why I got into this space in the first place. Because even when I was starting building my startup, at the same time, I was just looking at the political side, so I can know every angle of the industry that I'm in, because that's really where everything goes around. And that's right when I first started to really get into it. That's when the ban was coming around, and that's
Mhm.
why I was like, again, protecting. We're going to be majority e-commerce based. However, we're getting some offers to go into some stores. It's just right now, what's the point of going into a store if you're going to get banned?
Right.
That just wastes everyone's time. You see, so that's just kind of the whole situation on my end. But yeah, I'm here for the political fight regardless, and I'm just here to make sure people have their personal freedoms and that they're not being poisoned. And we can communicate with legislators the right way rather than just kind of being screwed over by them.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like the key is like we have to figure out, I don't know, it's obviously maybe not as simple as this, but like Leader Lightford, for example, like
Mhm.
she is a proponent of the CRTA, which is this highly regulated, compliance focused, limited licensed cannabis
Mhm.
regime. And I think that the people that paid for that, and maybe contributed to her campaign and everything else have been very clear that like unless you drive this through like they almost did, like we're not going to contribute to you anymore. And I guess really what I'm trying to say is, dude, hemp, like I've been bitching about the way the cannabis the cannabis market has been for consumers for years. I'm not even talking about businesses. I have
Yeah.
no aspiration to get into the business. I'm just a consumer. And I've been
Mhm.
bitching about this for years. And what's crazy is it took hemp for people to like, I feel like actually start having this conversation, and I'm not
Mhm.
trying to say that I was like ahead of the curve or anything. I had heard it from these ideas from other people. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that it's crazy that, people like me can complain about this and come up with rational arguments all day long. But until something like what has happened, which I view it, and I'm sure you've heard this analogy as well, I view it
Yeah.
like Uber and taxis. It just
Right.
happened and then you have to fucking deal with it.
Mhm.
Like it kind of flipped the world upside down for an industry and there's got to
Mhm.
be like some answer. Um, so yeah.
And my thing is, even with hemp versus cannabis, it's like if one thing is technically the superior, easier barrier of entry to get into, and it's a superior product, that's just capitalism. You know, like if you can set up a store quicker than you can on the cannabis side, and you can make more money, then you should just go with the hemp industry. That's what I would say if I had to choose between the two. I'm not trying to make anyone really upset, but that's what I think about when it comes to business. If there's a better product, you have to do a new iteration. Like when I think about, so I have a product right here in my hand right now. So this is one of our vapes. And there's some iterations I want to do to the boxes. And that's kind of the thing. Like over time, you make changes, you pivot if you want to have a successful business, you know?
Right.
So if there's a better, that's just kind of what I see. And
Yeah.
it is hard for people to even get, sometimes medical marijuana licenses, etc. And yeah, I just don't want us to have another black market. And I don't think people should be going thrown in jail for selling dog treats with CBD in them or something silly like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Now, I want to address your point you just brought up like, lower barriers to entry, and I totally agree with you. But
mhm,
this is how these cannabis companies are structured, and this is halfway to address your point, but also halfway to give people a sneak peek at my upcoming mini documentary, which you can Get tickets to screenings too now at colememo.com/minidoc, or if you just want to watch it, you can actually watch it at colememo.com/minidoc. Here's a peek, and again, this scene kind of addresses your comment about, hemp creates lower barriers to entry. Well, that's not what they want. Here's the clip.
Take Curaleaf and Green Thumb Industries, two of the biggest cannabis corporations. Now, here's what they're telling investors. Curaleaf says that it, quote, maintains an operational footprint of primarily limited licensed states with natural high barriers to entry and limited market participants, end quote. Now, that's an annoying corporate speak way of saying they want monopoly power. Green Thumb Industries says it is seeking to operate in, quote, limited supply markets, end quote. That's a slightly shorter but equally annoying way of saying the same thing.
So, right, they low barriers to entry to them. It's like, well, then we don't even want to fucking be here anymore. That's why they're gonna fight tooth and nail. Like, that's what they sell to stock investors. That's why they left California. Both Curaleaf and Cresco. And some, it's funny. Some clip I went on somebody else's podcast. Some clip of me went viral where I was saying exactly that. And people in the comments, I don't even know why. It's like the first time I look at comments in a while, and they're like, actually, Cresco's still in California. As a brand, they are. They're not cultivating because it's a race to the bottom. So they make these like strategic decisions to pull out, maybe, but still have a presence and of course like a presence in a market like California. So, anyways,
yeah. Again, I just have to make sure that we talk to the right people and make sure this doesn't get banned, and just go from there.
Yeah, well said, dude. I mean,
yeah. And to go forward, to kind of pivot the conversation some more, what got you into this altogether? You were talking about more so when you kind of just a consumer and everything, and you have the podcast, and I was just curious on what got you interested in it.
Yeah. So I've been consuming cannabis since I was in like 8th grade, off and on, not crazy regularly, obviously, as a kid, but that's about when I started. And I'm trying to think of how it lined up, but sometime like when I was in high school or around then, getting into high school, Colorado legalized it, which was super interesting to see play out. I remember watching like Vice reports on it back in the day, and sometimes I'll rewatch those Vice reports just for the nostalgia factor. And I mean, starting then, I would just every day I'd Google marijuana news, and I've done that since then. Now sometimes I'll look up Illinois marijuana news or Illinois cannabis news, variations of the title, but just to like stay in the loop of what's going on. I just find the topic fascinating in and of itself, the development of policy and really the development of access. That's, because I remember some of my first memories of Colorado becoming legal was like, yes, everybody had access, but the prices were really high. And then that kind of was addressed, and there was the whole swing and balance. But then, to bring us to the podcast, I have always sort of liked creating media and videos. It's just sort of been a hobby of mine ever since I like learned to use a computer and a camera. But when we were leading up to legalization, I was thinking like, it'd be cool to do a podcast. I'd been thinking about doing a podcast anyways, but I was like, I want like a topic, to really dig into. And I was like, we were about to legalize, so it was perfect. And I had been a medical card holder for I think about a year or two before legalization. So I was like familiar with all the brands. I had really become familiar with like the market structure, but I had these like questions. And that's when I started the Chillinois podcast. I had like what I thought to be the truth, had a lot of questions, didn't really know how to verbalize any of it, and I still don't. I'm still learning that. It's a skill that I'm trying to get better at, but that's kind of how it all started, man. Was just like I wanted to start a podcast, and like I said, I started it as the Chillinois podcast. Ultimately, kind of wanted to break out of the mold of being like limited to Illinois cannabis content, because anytime I would talk about like mushrooms or something in another state, or they'd be like, "What the hell, man? Why are you talking about this in Nevada? I thought you were the Chillinois podcast." And I'd be like, I started to get frustrated with that and the idea that I could only be limited to Illinois. And so I had been making a joke over the years that, you know, you can thank me for the state legal cannabis systems that are going on because of the Cole memo, right? Which is federal guidance, which allows all that to go on.
Yeah.
And at one point somebody said, like, you should start a blog named that. And I was like, I was just, at the time I was thinking I wanted to change my show name. And when they said that, I was like, that's the new show name.
Yeah.
You know, just because most people, you know, you and I probably recognize it as as a reference to cannabis policy, but most people just think it's some stupid reference to my own name. You know, that I'm like so full of myself that I'm putting my own name in the show title, and that actually works to my benefit. You know, if I can get people over that hump, it works to my benefit to an extent, because now I can talk about whatever the fuck I want to talk about. I mostly talk about cannabis, and for people, again, that are cannabis policy nerds, they see the name and they know this person's probably going to be talking about cannabis. But for people that aren't in the know, that allows me to just be like kind of flexible and talk about whatever the hell I want. So if you check out my episodes, you'll see like it's a lot of cannabis content. There's some mushroom people, you know, there's some state representatives, but then there are also like a maintenance man, a deer dealer. And I'm not talking about like a John Deere dealer. I'm talking about like a man in Southern Illinois that raises deer and sells it to like these I don't even fucking remember. I was high and drunk, but you have to check it out.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so long-winded answer, but that's kind of like how I started and how it evolved, and you know, here we are.
Yeah. That's real nice. I like, you know, what you got going on, and I can't wait to even share it for M4MM, the documentary that you have coming up, you know, and just kind of more awareness to it, because you put in a lot of work. So
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's why I'm super excited about that. I was talking to you before we went on air. Like, I'm super excited for that because, you know, in a podcast just like this, we go anywhere and everywhere. And sometimes, you know, sometimes you can lose people. Like, we're on the same page, obviously, on a lot of these things. Like, we know what we're talking about. It's not like you're like, if it's not like you're like, catch me up on that or anything. We seem to be on the same page. You know what I mean? But some people might tune in and they're not. And so, you know, and it's hard to just dive into a podcast. So I'm really excited to release this mini doc because it's like a TV time slot, and it covers, I would say, about the first 2 years of legalization, as I say in air quotes. And it kind of, like I say, it just gives you a focused, punchy, it gives you my vision in a very focused, delivered format, which, like I say, in a podcast, even like right there, I just stopped, like lost my train of thought and was like, so with the mini doc, it's just boom, 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 information, citations for everything. A bibliography will be published alongside of it. You know what I mean? So it's like, here's the information, take it and run with it. And like, my hope is people do that and make a fucking better mini doc, or, you know, because like, I'm like, how the hell is this not like a Netflix series? Like, there's some crazy shit when you really dig into it. You know what I mean?
yeah. It could be.
That's right. It could be.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. Just be the catalyst of everything and then go from there. Yeah. That'd be cool.
Yeah. So, like I say, I'm just happy because if anybody, this is what I've been saying to, you know, people when I talk to them about this, like privately, and this about this project, I'll be like, if from now on, once I release this, if anybody is like not on the same page like you and I are, I'm literally, and I don't even mean to like sound arrogant, but I'm just gonna be like, I'm gonna give you my mini documentary, watch it. You can watch it on 2x speed, which means you'll have it done in 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we'll be on the same page. And then we can like restart this conversation. And if you didn't understand anything, and I like that because like sometimes when people ask me like, what's your deal with the way Illinois legalized cannabis? I'm like, fuck, where do I begin? So this, like I say, very focused, in a TV time slot, I hope it resonates well with the crowd. So
Yeah. And also we get some to light for it as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
She's not in part 1, but she might be in part 2, that's for sure.
Right. Honestly, at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but cool, man. Yeah, thank you for asking me about that. And one thing I didn't ask you yet, just like before we part ways, like how long have you been consuming cannabis, and like how did you find yourself in this?
Well, around since high school. I'll give you a quick story. So
Sure.
basically, when I was younger, I used to like to create things, and I was always interested in business. So I had like a comic book company when I was just, like fourth grade. It was fourth grade. And I was just, when I would sell the comics, I was making decent money for a fourth grader, but then the school banned it because they're like, we don't want you selling things. And I was just like, that creative itch kind of got taken away in a sense. And then as I got older, I would study the war on drugs. I would study things like psilocybin, also weed and everything else, and kind of that there was a lot more beneficial effects to them. And it's just like people weren't really paying attention to them. So like 5, 6 years ago, I was just like, these things actually have benefits that a lot of people don't understand. I know people that were affected on the war on drugs. I know people that were hooked on drugs, even died from them. I've seen a lot in my life. It's just more so just seeing how the entire system works and how there's things that can help us as a society that we don't want to bring, you know, um, we don't want to give people, we don't want to give people access to things that can help them, and that's just one of the things that reasons why I'm even fighting for him, because even right now, my grandmother, she has like terrible back pain. She's going to the ER right now. And it's just we're seeing like other weed or cannabis products that can also help, because opioids aren't really helping, the way they should. So it's just a lot on my end that goes on. And I'm just interested in the space. I've always been interested in it. I've done my research when it comes to just understanding the chemical compounds and just seeing how things can alter the mind in a positive way, you know, because a lot of these things, if you want to go in the mushroom route, that's just more powerful, and they're doing a lot of scientific research. So it's cool seeing how everything evolved from like 6 years ago to like now, where everyone's like, this is all bad and everything. And then they're like, oh, well, it has some medicinal effects. And I'm like, yeah, it I've even heard like documentaries where Native Americans were talking about that gave people psilocybin and things like that, about like this is more of a medicinal type of product and you guys are gonna mess it up. Now we're here, you know? But yeah, it's just making sure people have proper access to knowledge. We make sure we just stigmatize things appropriately and just go from there. And then we can kind of evolve as a people, I believe, when we just, instead of giving the bad things, we give the good things. And that's an idealistic way of saying it, but yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got in the weed. That's why I'm interested in this industry. I'm interested because just like how the government banned my last business, I don't want, this type of business or industry to be banned as well, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Caleb, I want to thank you for joining me. You said you're moving and you're not feeling well. If I were you,
Yeah.
I would have canceled. So,
Yeah.
but I want to thank you, and you should hit me back up when you're settled and want to chat. I'm sure that in the next few months we're gonna have things to talk about. So
Sure. Yeah.
hopefully they will be good things, celebratory
Yeah.
things, and not bad things. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Cool, man. Well, again, listeners, we'll have the links for Minorities for Medical Marijuana in the show notes. That's Minorities for medicalmarijuana.org. And Caleb, once again, thank you for sitting down with me today.
All right.
Cool. Folks, take care. We'll see you on the next one. Caleb, we'll be in touch. See ya.
All right.